Have you ever wondered where the very first ghost came from? Long before haunted houses, eerie graveyards, or whispers in the dark, there was a time when the idea of a restless spirit was still new, still terrifying. In the silent corners of ancient temples, in the flicker of oil lamps deep within crumbling tombs, the earliest humans began to ask, what happens when the dead are not at peace? What if someone dies alone, forgotten, or wronged? Can they return? And if they do, what do they want from the living? Long before the rise of cities and kings, before ziggurats reached toward the heavens, the people of ancient Mesopotamia believed the world was held in delicate balance between life and death, light and shadow, the seen and the unseen. Beneath the dust of the land between the great rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, lay secrets older than time itself. It was here, in the cradle of civilization and in the twilight of divine law, that the first ghost emerged. Not from magic or gods, but from something far more human, forgetfulness. And that ghost has been whispering through the ages ever since. In the earliest days of existence, before the first kings carved their names into stone, the universe was formless chaos. From this primordial void emerged the great gods of Mesopotamia: Anu, god of the sky; Enlil, god of air and storms; and Enki, the god of wisdom and waters. Together, they shaped the world. The heavens above, the earth below, and the abyss beneath. To help maintain cosmic order, they brought forth the Anunnaki, a divine assembly that would rule the fates of gods and mortals alike. Among this powerful pantheon was Ereshkigal, the dark sister of Inanna, and the somber queen of the underworld. She was given dominion over the shadowy land of the dead, a realm known as Kur, Sumerian, or Erkala, Akkadian, a place not of torment, but of silence, dust, and eternal separation from the living. The underworld had its own laws, its own guardians, and its own hunger for souls. When the gods decided to create humanity, it was not out of pure benevolence, but necessity. The lesser gods had grown weary of their labors, and so humans were fashioned from the clay of the earth, mixed with the divine blood of a sacrificed god, giving them both form and spirit. Into this new creation, the gods breathed life, but with life came an inevitable truth: death. Knowing that every living being must one day return to the earth, the gods appointed Ereshkigal as custodian of all souls. Upon death, each person's spirit, called the Gidim in Sumerian or Etemu in Akkadian, was expected to descend into her domain. There they would exist as shadowy echoes of their former selves, sustained by the offerings of the living and the memory of those they left behind. But the divine design was not flawless. Some souls, those of the unburied, the cursed, the murdered, or those forgotten by their kin, did not complete the journey to Kur. Their spirits lingered in the world above, trapped between realms, unable to find rest. These were not meant to exist in the realm of the living, nor were they welcomed in the land of the dead. In this liminal space, the first ghost was born, not by a god's hand, but by the failure of human duty and the cracks in divine law. Thus, ghosts were not crafted like men or stars. They were consequences, anomalies in the great balance between life and death. They were born from absence, the absence of burial, of memory, of ritual. Though the gods created the world and its order, it was human forgetfulness that gave rise to the first spirit that would wander in unrest, a reflection not of divine wrath, but of mortal neglect. In the sacred writings and myths of ancient Mesopotamia, death was never seen as a finality. It was a crossing over, a transformation. The moment a person took their final breath, a delicate process began. Their spirit was meant to begin its journey to the underworld, the realm of Ereshkigal. This spirit was believed to retain the essence of the person's thoughts, memories, and desires, though stripped of flesh and earthly pleasures. The journey to the afterlife was not automatic. It required rites, rituals, and remembrance. Funerary offerings of food, drink, and incense were essential, as they sustained the spirit in its new, shadowy form. Priests, family members, and mourners played sacred roles to ensure the deceased would be properly guided by divine messengers, sometimes demons of the underworld, sometimes protective spirits, and welcomed into the vast dusty plains of Kur or Ereshkigal. There, the dead were not punished, but existed in a twilight state, a mere echo of the living world. But not all spirits made it there. Those who died violently, in war, by murder or accident, those who perished alone, without kin to bury them, and especially those who were forgotten, left without offerings or remembrance, were condemned to wander. Without proper rites, their spirit could not find the road to Kur. Without a name spoken in mourning, they were invisible to the gods. These restless souls remained in the world of the living, unseen but not unfelt, lingering in homes, graveyards, and dark corners, whispering grief into the ears of the living. Ghosts, then, were not created by divine intention. They were the result of human failure, a consequence of neglected responsibilities, unfulfilled vows, and broken rituals. The Mesopotamians believed that the unsettled dead could bring disease, misfortune, or madness. Ghosts were not inherently evil, but they were hungry, confused, and angry, their suffering a direct reflection of the spiritual disorder they had been forced into. In this belief system, ghosts served as a terrifying reminder that death demands memory, that ritual gives peace, and that the greatest cruelty was to let a soul slip into oblivion. Thus, the first ghost rose, not from divine wrath, but from a tear in the sacred fabric that held the worlds of the living and the dead apart. For the first ghost, legend tells of Enkimdu, a humble and kind-hearted farmer who lived in the fertile lands near the banks of the Euphrates. He was a man of the soil, one who spoke to the grain, coaxed barley from the dust, and gave thanks to the gods for every harvest. Known for his devotion to the earth and his quiet strength, Enkimdu was respected in his village, though not of noble blood. Yet even the most faithful are not spared by fate. One season, the rains came early and without mercy. The river swelled beyond its banks, and a violent flood tore through the land. In the chaos, Enkimdu was swept away, his body lost to the waters, his breath stolen by the storm. No grave was dug, no mourners gathered. His name was not spoken in lamentation, and no offerings were laid upon an altar in his memory. His death went unseen, and his soul, the Gidim, became trapped, neither among the living nor welcomed into the land of the dead. Thus, Enkimdu became the first ghost. His spirit wandered the land, invisible, yet palpably present. Villagers began to whisper of cold winds moving through sealed homes, of shadows flickering in oil lamps though no one passed by. At night, they heard low moans carried on the breeze, and in dreams, a figure cloaked in mud and sorrow spoke without words. Livestock sickened, milk turned sour, and wells once full of sweet water grew dry. Families quarreled for no reason. Children woke screaming from visions of a man with empty eyes and soil-covered hands. Fear gripped the community, and they turned to their gods for answers. It was a temple priestess, attuned to the sacred energies of both the divine and the dead, who finally understood. Through ritual trance, she heard Enkimdu's voice in the darkness. He did not seek vengeance, he sought recognition. He cried not for revenge, but for ritual, for the sacred rites that would guide him to Ereshkigal, where he could rest among his ancestors. The priestess gathered the village, and for the first time, the rites of ghost appeasement were performed. Offerings of grain, water, and incense were made. His name was sung aloud with mourning and respect. A burial site was consecrated, and a statue erected in his image to anchor his memory to the world of the living. As the final prayers were uttered, the strange disturbances ceased, peace returned, and the spirit of Enkimdu passed into the underworld, at last no longer alone. From this tale, the Mesopotamians learned that even the lowliest soul must be remembered. Enkimdu's story was passed down through generations, becoming the foundation of ghost rituals that would shape Mesopotamian religious practices for centuries. He was the first to rise, not to haunt in hatred, but to remind the living of their sacred duty to the dead. As centuries passed and the lands of Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and Assyria rose and fell, the presence of ghosts only deepened in the minds of the people. These restless spirits were no longer just whispers in the wind. They had names, personalities, powers, and purposes. The ancient Mesopotamians came to see ghosts as complex beings, messengers between the realms, harbingers of omens, bringers of punishment, and occasionally silent guardians. Some ghosts, like the Alu, struck terror into the hearts of the living. These were shadow demons, faceless, formless presences that crept into bedrooms under the cover of night. Victims would awaken unable to move or speak, trapped in paralyzing fear as if a heavy weight pressed on their chest. Today we might call it sleep paralysis, but to the Mesopotamians it was the Alu, a ghost seeking recognition, revenge, or simply drawn to the warmth of the living. Others, like the Uruku, were fueled by vengeance. These spirits had been wronged in life, betrayed, murdered, or dishonored, and they roamed the earth seeking to right those wrongs. They tormented their killers, haunted those who broke oaths, and whispered dark truths into the ears of priests and kings. These ghosts were often described as clinging to walls, hiding in shadows, or appearing in reflective surfaces, half visible but wholly present. And yet, not all ghosts brought harm. Some were the benevolent dead, ancestors who lingered to protect their descendants or warn of danger. Dreams were seen as bridges through which these spirits could communicate. A grandfather might visit his granddaughter in a vision, revealing where to find hidden grain during a famine. A deceased mother could whisper guidance to her son before battle. Ghosts, in this sense, were woven into the very fabric of Mesopotamian life. Not just feared, but respected. Their presence reminded the living of sacred obligations: bury the dead with honor, perform the funerary rites, and speak the names of the ancestors. Forgetting the dead was seen as a spiritual crime. To be nameless in death was to become untethered from Ereshkigal and cursed to wander endlessly. The Mesopotamians believed that it was not the cruelty of the gods, but the negligence of the living that gave rise to malevolent spirits. To maintain harmony between the worlds, temples employed spiritual specialists. The Ashipu, or exorcist, used chants, incantations, and sacred objects to drive away malevolent ghosts. The Kalu, or lamentation priest, performed ritual wailing and psalms to appease the dead and guide them home. Offerings of bread, beer, water, and incense were left at graves and shrines to nourish the Gidim and assure them they were not forgotten. Ghosts were not merely specters, they were echoes of human failure, shaped by neglect, injustice, and broken memory. And as long as people lived, so too would the dead linger, watching, waiting, whispering, until their names were remembered and their souls laid to rest. Though the empires of Mesopotamia, Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and Assyria have long since turned to dust, the shadows they cast endure. Their gods may no longer be worshipped, and their temples lie in ruins, but the idea of the restless dead has never left us. The Gidim of ancient clay tablets have transformed over time into the ghosts of folklore, the spirits of legends, and the phantoms that haunt stories to this day. At the heart of many modern ghost tales is a hauntingly familiar theme: a soul unable to rest. Whether it is a woman in white crying for her lost child, a ghost haunting a battlefield, or a spirit tethered to a cursed house, these stories carry the spiritual DNA of Enkimdu, the first wandering Gidim. Like Enkimdu, modern ghosts are often born from violence, neglect, or forgotten rites, their torment not caused by evil deeds, but by being unseen, unheard, and unhonored. The ancient belief that improper burial or neglected remembrance could trap a soul between realms is still reflected in global customs today. From All Souls' Day in Catholic tradition to Obon in Japan, Qingming in China, or the Day of the Dead in Latin America, people across the world continue to light candles, offer food, and speak the names of the deceased. The rituals may vary, but the purpose is the same: to remember, to honor, and to ensure peace in the afterlife. Even in modern ghost hunting lore and paranormal investigation, many believe that spirits remain bound to the earthly plane due to unfinished business. a notion that can be traced directly back to the Mesopotamian idea of broken spiritual contracts. The ancient Mesopotamians believed that every death was a passage, and if that passage was disrupted, the soul became unmoored, neither here nor there. Today's stories of ghosts seeking closure, vengeance, or simply to be acknowledged mirror this age-old understanding. In film, literature, and even popular ghost hunting shows, the concept of the ghost has retained much of the emotional weight it carried in antiquity. Ghosts are not just monsters, they are echoes of memory, grief in motion, unfinished stories. This perspective, seeing ghosts as the product of human failure to remember or honor, was born in the cradle of civilization, beneath the ziggurats of Sumer, where people first whispered the names of the dead and feared what might happen if they forgot. Thus, though thousands of years have passed, we remain connected to those ancient beliefs. Every time we feel a chill in an empty room, hear a voice with no source, or light a candle at a grave, we are continuing a spiritual lineage that began with Enkimdu's cry on the wind. In the end, ghosts are not merely creatures of fear, they are mirrors, reflecting our responsibilities to the past and the eternal desire to be remembered. The first ghost was not born from wrath or divine wrath, it was born from silence, from the ache of being forgotten. Enkimdu's spirit, adrift between worlds, was not a curse upon the living, but a sorrowful reminder that the dead need us just as much as we need them. In the myths of Mesopotamia, the line between the living and the dead is not a boundary, it is a bond, one sustained by memory, ritual, and reverence. When that bond is broken, when the name is no longer spoken, when the burial rites go undone, the veil thins, and the Gidams stir. So when the fire burns low and the world grows quiet, when a shadow flickers across the wall or the wind whispers your name, listen closely. Perhaps it is only your imagination, or perhaps it is Enkimdu, still wandering, still waiting, not for vengeance, but for someone to remember. For in the end, the first ghost teaches us that forgetting is the true death, and remembrance is the path home.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.